Welcome to Little Known Galaxy, the game where you pilot a massive mothership, befriending your crew, making long trips to all types of planets, heading down to explore and gather essential resources while meeting the locals and inviting them to join your mission in discovering the secrets behind an ancient relic. If you haven't, please consider subscribing and enjoy. As a newly recruited captain, my mission is to investigate a mysterious relic on the desolate grey planet. My ship was the Odyssey and I was acquainted with CPU, my companion on board. They gave me a quick tour of the place, a residential area, the cargo hold from where I could visit the planet being orbited, and finally, the captain's quarters. This looks like a safety hazard. My room was comfortable though, so collecting a restoration ray, I got to work cleaning up the area, heading through an airlock and discovering outer hull exit. Sounds pretty dangerous to me, not really worth the... Even the outside of my ship was in disrepair, so exploration completed. I returned, heading east to meet Kada, a chief science officer. She told me spirits were low and I should meet everyone on board. Now, my ship was divided into 7 floors, so beginning with recreation, I aimed to tour the entire place and introduce myself to the crew. I moved on to science and medical, meeting some doctors and Le Cafe robot. Seeing the grey planet I would soon set foot on, and continued to the crew quarters. Here I met Pilot and the ravaged stuffed animal, heading down to the plaza and seeing Jimmy, Kendall the child, and Lynn the botanist. Having a quick look around the general store manned by Robert and 3D Robot, I was checking out the abandoned buildings outside when CPU informed me the ship was going into night mode. Knowing time was of the essence, I spoke with Chip and Shinji the student, returning to my quarters. Lynn said hello the next morning, handing me a planter, and suiting up, told me that each one required some energy produced by solar panels. Making a neat row, I exited again to increase my power supply before deciding to explore the cargo bay. Unfortunately, I could not steal anything nor ball, so I wandered left, entering another airlock containing my personal spacecraft. It was under repair though, so continuing my exploration, I came across an engine room, a massive area with nothing to do, so still needing to meet a couple of people, but entering recreation, I found no one. Making my way to the quarters when I found a suspicious dark hallway. A single lit door sat in the middle, and cautiously entering some boxes began to move. Was it a ghost? It was a feline. Mine now, apparently, so naming it, Knob. I met Lauren the fitness enthusiast and Sprout the child. Walking into a home uninvited, I met Fiji and her Puffle Poofy, realizing the only person left was I-1900. My ship's maintenance was not yet completed, so watering my potatoes, I decided to train myself by clearing the area. I made some decent progress exiting, and after some search, finally found the robot rabbit fella. I had some funds as well, so buying some corn seeds, I headed down to medical to see Kada, who finally told me my ship was complete, handing over a shovel and an alien blaster. That's a dark omen. This looked damn cool though, I thought, shooting haphazardly indoors and passing out from the strain. Man, I'm a bit of an idiot. The next morning, I petted Knob, watered my plants, but realizing I couldn't make more planters for the corn seeds I bought, it was time to descend. Heading to the cargo bay, I talked with Edward, who had graciously drawn a little goober under the door, and hopping in, I finally sped off to the grey planet. It was a barren looking area, already slightly populated by the crew's little time spent here. Wandering upwards, I was introduced to the reason I was here, the ancient relic. It didn't do much, and I can't read that. Deciding to find a local to translate, I picked up a pet rock, blasting away at its family to uncover a cave, and inside, unbelievably, was an alien. It did not want to cooperate, I can't read that, but figuring out it wanted food, I decided, after gathering a bunch of planter soil, that the best course was asking Kada. Finding her in the staircase, she recommended some corn, soybeans, and food rations. I am not an expert, so building up some planters, I placed in my corn and popped out to the hull, spending the last of my energy clearing the space. I had an email on day 5, it was Francis, giving me some energy source. My plan for today was to explore more of the grey planet, so entering my shuttle, I shot back down, landing in a separate area, and using my blaster, I gathered a bunch of resources, for some reason quickly filling my inventory and forcing an early retreat. A better backpack was surely needed, so visiting the general store, well, dirt equals planters equals crops equals money, so flying back down, I set to work digging up the floor, getting a couple of dirt cubes, eventually uncovering a strange teleporter. Being low anyways, I decided to wait, digging again until my energy was on 1, heading back to the shuttle and accidentally swinging on the way inside. I'm slightly embarrassed. My potatoes were finally grown, so excited to notify Lynn, I headed to Recreation and handed her the spud. That is a lot of money. And being the genius investor I am, I bought some soybeans for Soot the alien. I can smell profit from a mile away. I also located the food rations, 100 each from the cafeteria. I have 0 to my name though, so planting everything, I crafted another solar panel and installed it on my roof. Now wanting to return to the surface, I entered the locker and... oh. It's Turnip Boy. He wanted me to explore further for his science project, so after landing, I uncovered the checkpoint thing and used it as a map, finding another area suitable for touching my shuttle down. There were more aliens here, so attempting first contact. Using my gun, I found another map segment, headed off again, landing in a slightly smaller area where I discovered a strange capsule thing. Gathered a bunch of soil, and when my energy looked low, flew back up to the mothership. It was night mode by the time I arrived, so quickly making some planters. I realized my energy was out, and a solar panel was too expensive. Some expansion seems to be necessary. As such, fully invigorated, I got to work sucking all the scrap lying around. By the time I was drained, I was just 3 metal off getting a panel, so drinking the energy source gifted to me, I got back to work, getting not very lucky. Uh-oh. I have 1 chance left. Going for it. Oh, I was hoping to complain. Placing the panel on the roof, I decided that today I would befriend my crewmates, and with 7 pet rocks in pocket, I took the elevator down. It seemed like a decent gift, but giving a rock to Piper, she returned the favor with 50 gold. I may have been slightly outdone. Sprout liked it though. Kater just asked me for some service samples, and after receiving a mediocre reaction from the remaining people, I decided to visit the cargo bay in hopes of upgrading my ship or something. The store was closed. My main goal for day 8 was to gather soil samples for planters, as well as to explore further for Sprout's map project. Unfortunately, I quickly realized my map pieces had disappeared, and redigging them was my only choice. And I had half energy by the time I found the first one. I really got that positive outlook though, and with luck, I found the second one in no time, along with the third, the fourth, and the fifth. I was gonna pass out by this time though, so heading back to the mothership, I couldn't make planters thanks to a lack of metal, so crunching down on some space radish, I cleaned up for the evening. At this point, all I needed to do was to wait until my crops were grown to feed Soot the alien, so heading back to the cargo bay store, I browsed, quickly leaving with my 142 gold, shooting back down and getting to work digging. I wanted to reach the 10th level, or the second checkpoint today, but if I won't, I could still... Yo, where is this? Am I being griefed by this game? My luck turned around though, and reaching level 8, it was completely infested by rock bug things. That was a small digging area though, so moving on, it would... Wait, where is it? There was no other spaces to dig. The Grey Planet is truly an unforgiving place. My corn, on the other hand, was ready to harvest. Although Soot wanted it, knowing there was more to come, I sold them. Then, knowing level 10 was doable, I headed back down to the surface. This circle place was once again a complete bum. Level 6 done with a smidge of energy left. Level 7 requiring some more space radish sustenance. But eventually, I made it back here. The stone-infested area. The problem had certainly not mended itself. Almost getting myself in a very bad situation. I managed to take all of them out, so with no bothers, I was able to dig out the place, miraculously finding the map piece. I was on level 9, 1 away from the checkpoint, so determined, I took out some enemies and got digging. And continued to dig. And oh, no, it's not looking good. 1 swing left, and no luck. And no, I did not see the radishes sitting directly in front of me. My soy, though, had beans harvested. I had materials available as well, so crafting some more planters, I pre-watered, headed to the plaza, bought some oil and corn from the general store. Why? Well, robots need oil probably, and Max the robot is single. I'm kidding. He asked me for it, okay? Getting 80 gold in return, I arrived back at my quarters, planting, then contemplating my lack of radish, decided that cleaning the roof would be a solid game plan. By the time my energy ran out, it was looking a little less run down. It was still early in the night though, and seeing my spare funds, I headed back to the plaza and bought rations for Soot. My long-awaited corn was ready the next morning, so everything set to feed my little alien friend, I wandered to the general store, hoping to buy a backpack. Luckily for me, Roomba Boy never takes breaks. I could just sell to him, finally heading through my cargo bay and landing back on the Grey Planet, where I excitedly entered Soot's cave and timidly fed the small lad. In return, receiving a piece of the ancient relic outside, he teleported out to join my crew on the Odyssey. Heading back to the relic, I placed in the piece and... what's this? a galactic map of sorts. This looked pretty interesting, so returning to the mothership, I called a meeting with the main crew, realizing it was a map to another planet, but deciding to chill here for the moment. Luckily, the general store was open as well, so grabbing my corn to sell it immediately, I bought a bunch of corn seeds, and with some time left, I flew down in hopes of gathering radishes for another expedition further on. That night, Soot took residence in a toy house. The reason we hadn't left yet was Sprout the Child's request of exploring the grey planet, and with yesterday's radish in pocket, I shot back down to the surface and got digging. Reaching the rock crab level quickly enough, I managed to pass it easily, and now my hopes slightly higher, I took out some enemies, and with some energy and 2 radishes left, I started digging. And now no radishes left, and now 1 energy left, and now none. All of today had been a waste. I then accidentally clicked and ended up in the hospital. I made the decision the following morning that Sprout did not matter, and I would leave this absolute rodent of a planet. Unfortunately, I needed a bunch of dark matter fuel, which I was given the refiner blueprint for, but lacking in stone, I was forced to once again descend. Before that though, I had the funds secured for a new backpack, so heading inside, the store is closed on Saturdays. Heading back down to the planet with my blaster in hand, I collected a bunch of stone, and consuming a couple of radishes, I managed to gather a solid 17 and came back with literally 0 energy. Crafting up the refiner, I hadn't gathered enough stone. It is 2:45. I have 0 energy. What am I supposed to do? Pet rocks seemed like a nice gift, so I spent the evening wandering around my massive ship, handing them out, then coming back to realize I could in fact afford a solar panel and planters, so placing them, I also extended my roof array. The store was open on day 15, so buying myself a backpack and some seeds, I planted them in my quarters, sped down to the planet, and got to work gathering stone for the refiner. Using my whole energy bar, I managed to get a huge 28 stone, easily affording the refiner back at home and placing in some dark matter. It did not have the power though yet, so turning off one of my planters, it began compressing. And while I waited, I made the strange discovery that I could walk through objects. Curious. The refinery was done, giving me 1 out of 5 required dark matter. As there was still plenty of waiting to be done, I watered my crops, then cleaned up a little around the area. Picking up the 1 fuel that I had and entering the engine room, I threw it in. Now, obviously, if I wanted more fuel, I needed more refiners, which needed more power. So arriving on the surface, I got to work gathering metal bits for some solar panels. Unfortunately, due to my unwillingness to waste any radishes on such a mission, I ended up with less than enough, but still usefully spent the day chatting with the crew members around, increasing my reputation as a captain. Harvesting even more corn, I was getting slightly impatient in leaving for the new mysterious ringed planet, so to pass the time, I arrived at the general store to purchase seeds, then planted them at home, wandering to the cargo bay and hopping in my shuttle to look for metal once again. I made some solid progress through the levels and gathered a bunch of both metal and precious radishes, finally crafting my solar panel and further increasing my roof power generation. And if you'd look at that, even more of my corn is ready, but I don't really care because my dark matter is done. Chucking them all in the engine, I ran into the flight deck, opened my star map, but realized something. It would take 3 whole days to travel there, and not wanting to waste any, I decided to spend just today as some final time on the grey planet. Zooming down with my radishes in hand, reaching the grand level 10 was my goal. No gathering stone or metal, just digging. With enough willpower, I was sure. Yes, it's not looking good, lads. I had a lucky break on level 6, unlucky on level 7, and slowly running out of radishes, I took out the crab level, got to level 9 with some solid energy and a bunch of food, dug away, and miraculously managed to locate and arrive at the next checkpoint. Man, I'd actually done it. Feeling euphoric, I returned to my quarters. As such, bucket list complete for now, I was very happy to arrive at the bridge and set off for the new planet. Starting up the engines, we shot off to light speed, and I was left to wait 72 hours. I currently had a lot of funds, so buying a bunch of corn seeds, I also realized my materials were in an abundance. So making some more planters, I realized my need for more energy, then finally deciding my current tools weren't doing it for me, I wandered down to the cargo bay store, unfortunately noticing it was closed. I spent the night cleaning up. Good thing as well, as Frances was waiting outside of my door. She stressed to me the problems with viruses on board before handing me a microbe sensor and asking for my help in eradicating them. At least I'm pretty sure of it, because damn, the yapping does not stop. Sensing one pretty quickly, I unfortunately let it go as I was completely lost since I did not listen to her instructions. Man. The cargo store should be open now though, so entering, I made the grave realization that I was vastly too poor for anything. 2 more days until we arrived, so grabbing some more pet rocks and my microbe sensor, I wandered around my ship handing them out and detecting the little viruses. I actually found a bunch and even catching one on the bridge. As for the others, it seemed I was a little outclassed. I am I'm terrible at this. Subscribe, as to not inherent my incompetency. I had an email on day 21. It was Edward sending me an advertisement. At this point, there was only 1 day left until we arrived at the new planet. So to kill the time, I hopped in a suit and watched the stars fly by on the beautiful roof view of the Odyssey. This really gave me that 3 AM grind set, so cleaning up a bunch around my quarters, I spent some time chatting with some crew members, checking the engine room to see everything in perfect order, then returning to my hygienic practices. The CPU had woken me up as we had finally arrived at the new planet, and Robert had sent me an advertisement. Tending to my animals, I quickly headed to Science and Medical to see the mysterious planet for the first time. Fully blue by the looks of it, possibly an ocean of some sort, I wasn't sure, hopping in my shuttle and making my way down. Sure enough, it was a deep, vast ocean. Then I was welcomed to the blue Reef planet. The guard here did not seem very healthy, and wandering down, I found a small town of these fish people before formally introducing myself to King Tide and his daughter. Explaining the relic on the grey planet, the king showed some semblance of recognition before falling once again under land sickness. Apparently, this seemed like my perfect opportunity to plunder their belongings, but with nothing in hand's reach, I decided to return to the mothership to ask my medical staff for some land sick medication. As per usual, Sprat was completely lost, but Francis was able to help me, prescribing 10 ginger roots and some special vitamins. Ginger looking like the easier of the two, I rushed into the general store to see Robert leaving. The vitamins, on the other hand, required a medicine machine to create, which in turn needed a furnace to fabricate, so with the goal of producing one, I returned to the surface of Blue Reef to begin my exploration. This is a truly beautiful sight. I quickly found a map, but was faced soon after by a creepy tank fella who blew up into 3 little guys on defeat. The fauna on this planet are very strange indeed, so I had no moral problem in endangering them. Eventually arriving at the 4th area, but not having the resources to continue my plunder, I left happy with my 22 metal. Back on board, Kada once again asked me for some surface materials. I had completely forgotten about her last task. After harvesting some crops, my metal though had luckily allowed the production of a small furnace, and after some small adjustments, I managed to get it powered and smelting. Ginger seeds still on my mind though, I entered the plaza and what? It seems Lauren and Shinji had found some hovercrafts, which are now very purchasable at the cargo bay store. I'm nothing but a responsible captain though, and after filling my cart with ginger and watermelon seeds, I decided to never partake in such dangerous activities. It couldn't help to check the price though, which was obviously too expensive for my wallet, and also just a stop on my way to the shuttle, which I entered and landing set the goal to gather metal for more solar panels. Morale was high, it was early, and my energy bar was full. Arriving at level 2, to find the map, I killed every enemy, chopped every single rock, and almost dug every single dirt patch on Area 2. There goes my energy and my entire day. At least I found a curious new enemy, a clam who shot pearls at me. That does not make up for this planet's sins on my mental state. My furnace had exciting news though. It had produced aluminium, a core resource for the medicine machine. Not enough of it though, so placing another panel on my roof, I tended to my crops, which were wasting valuable ginger growing duration, before returning to the planet for metal and stone, as further exploration seemed like a solid procrastination from the main mission. Putting in the hard work, I managed to reach level 5, the first checkpoint, and my inventory filled with goodness. I noticed my lads Jimmy and Steven bowling in the cargo bay and decided to join them. I got slightly competitive. My raw metal supply had begun to dwindle, but my corn, on the other hand, was looking scrumptious. Sending it all off through the Roomba boy, I got to plant all of my ginger and almost all of my watermelon. Checking my star map and chatting with some crew members, I accidentally slipped over and fell into the cargo store, coincidentally scrolling to the hoverboard and checking the required resources. That was certainly an unfortunate series of events, spending my evening exploring further into the planet as a time kill for the ginger to grow. And of course, as I needed metal and such for infrastructure. Anyway, knob update time. He's getting more attached, and I am also getting more attached to my digital pet. The last of the soybeans were also finally shipped away today, but not being in the mood for another surface expedition, I decided today would be dedicated for microbe searching. Quickly being reminded of my absolute incompetency, I somehow managed to catch a few, completing a quest from a long while back. So timidly, to not solicit an unwarranted reaction, I handed them to Francis. She was happy enough, so escaping with my life, I accidentally slipped into the cargo bay store once again, but finding it closed, I took my shuttle down and calmly gathered some resources under the weak moonlight. It had also been recommended that I sell my microbes, which I did. Fiji's pet met me the following morning. I think. There is a dark matter refinery in the way. Fiji followed behind, explaining the creature was a Xeno, pets that came in all shapes and sizes, hatchable in this incubator thing. Recommending I get a pet for myself, she graciously left me with an egg and some food, but the house for these lads was mighty expensive. Watering away and smelting some sand for glass, which I needed for the pod, I headed back down to the surface for sand and metal when I was stopped by Bai, a curious salesman. He explained his very limited presence here, but finding nothing I required, I went back on my designated task. I also learnt you can get Xeno eggs from grass, but I had no such luck, ending the day when my energy ran out. Day 29 was the first day of the second quarter, and I had been promoted to novice captain. Accepting my congratulatory funds, I quickly watered, checking the new bag upgrade, which I decided wasn't necessary, returning to the cargo bay and landing once again here to gather xenopod resources. The idea of all types of little creatures living in my quarters sparked my interest, so with moral high, I got the map on the very last diggable tile. My soul has left my body. Miraculously though, the game decided to be nice enough, giving me relative luck and allowing my arrival at Area 10, home to the second checkpoint. Expertly baiting two enemies into ending each other, I returned to the ship with still some time in the night, gathering some flowers native to our orbit and headed around the quarters handing them out, ending with the night-dwelling crew in the plaza. At this point, I had spent all of my sand I had ever gathered, and I was just 2/3 of the way to my Xeno pod. As such, I had a mission: gather as much sand as possible and explore as far as possible. Energy was required for both of these things, so purchasing some standard rations, I descended and got to work clearing level after level, happy to not worry about health or energy, and finally managing to reach level 15. On this small island stood a chest, and slowly opening it, I received the greatest item thus far, a life spark, permanently increasing my energy. I have never been so happy. Continuing this grand mood of mine, I watered my crops, placed another chest since my storage situation wasn't looking great, then headed out, flowers in hand, to befriend my crewmates. Snap out of it, this is a waste of time, I thought so. Hopping on board, I arrived at the surface to begin my journey of collecting sand for the Xeno dome. Digging until my energy ran low, I got a solid 11, translating to 2 glass, quickly returning to supply my furnaces and craft another in case of increased demand. At this point, I only needed 10 more pieces of sand in total. So I woke up on day 32 with one very simple goal: water my crops, fly down to the surface, and get digging. And so, taking care of some aggressive wildlife, I dug. Luckily for me, very shortly into my mission, I managed to secure all of the needed resources and shot right back up, got them smelting, and also realized I could soon make a medicine machine. More importantly, tomorrow was the Xeno pod. So, very excited, I opened the crafter, and upon further inspection, more scrap metal was required. Begrudgingly harvesting my watermelons, I wandered to the general store, got distracted, and accepted Shinji's request for some dark matter fuel, returned to my quarters to realize I had them in my pocket, and handed them over for a disappointingly low price. Where was I? The general store. Entering, I bought a huge amount of cucumber seeds, hurrying back and planting them all, before finally getting my chance to return to the planet below. I had a damn lot of metal to collect, also breaking grass for egg chances, eating my rations when energy got low. Night quickly fell, and feeling a little in danger, I left with a solid 30 metal. The next morning, I found something peculiar: stone composite in my furnace. Accidentally slipping and putting some more stone in, I decided to be unbothered by such happenings and return to my day-to-day activities, finishing up the watering to wander through science and medical, as well as the plaza handing out gifts. What a great, responsible captain. This was when, picking up the composite stone from my furnaces, another peculiar something happened. I suddenly began walking to the cargo bay store, possessed. Maybe some ants were carrying me into the store, forgot some materials, returned to my quarters and picked them up to head back down, and somehow 2,200 gold fell out of my pocket, incidentally ordering a spaceboard. Oh man. How could this happen? Might as well leave it, I thought, and being out of metal again, I decided to clear my mind and shoot down to the planet's surface to gather a whole lot. I worked solidly until the dead of night, wandering through the nighttime halls of the Odyssey to arrive back home and finally craft up the Xeno pod. And wow, is this thing impressive. Placing my egg into the incubator, I was happy with the hours spent to obtain it. I was watering my crops when I realized that when these furnaces were done, I could build up my medicine machine. So to kill some time, I hopped back onto the roof where, surrounding my quickly growing solar farm sat a bunch of junk. Cleaning up every single piece that my tool allowed, I marveled at the scenery, descended into the ship to grab my materials, and placed the medicine machine. It was lacking power though, so returning to the roof, I placed another panel, allowing me to place in some minerals and see it get to work. At this rate, the fish people's sickness would be cured in no time at all. So deciding I had some to waste, I spent the afternoon hanging out with my buddies around the ship. Day 36 was admittedly pretty uneventful. I watered, then headed down to Science and Medical, where I purchased a bunch of energy supplements, the cheapest form of energy in my short experience, then hopped back in my shuttle to return to Blue Reef Planet and gather metal the entire time, able to greatly overstay my welcome thanks to the juice. By nightfall, I secured an impressive 60 scraps, returning to my quarters to receive the news that I was now 2 vitamins up out of the 12 that I needed. Well, at least collecting would be a whole lot funner now, seeing my space board was complete. Hopping on, This is not very fast. This is like the same as walking. I can barely tell the difference. I can't even hover over places I can't walk. There's no way 1.2 thousand gold fell out of my pocket for this absolute garbage. My ginger was done though, so only needing vitamins now, I checked out the crafting bench and found a meteorite extractor. That sounded very cool, but it needed recycled parts, which needs a recycler, which needs more metal. As such, I flew back down and got to work collecting metal, gulping down 3 whole energy drinks through this time. Surely, not very good for me, but getting a very useful 74 scraps. There was still time in the day though, and not wanting to use any more supplements, I headed around collecting microbes. I am still embarrassingly bad at this. At this point, things were looking up. I just needed a few more vitamins until I could leave this planet for a new one. My crops were growing well, and my egg was for sure soon to hatch. Riding my space disappointment through the cargo bay, I returned to the surface to gather up as much metal as possible, but this time returning quickly enough to maximize vitamin production as well as to continue searching for microbes. You see, I needed a specific one, an alien looking fella for the recycler, but unfortunately, after a full day of detecting lads and catching them, I was not in luck. The following morning, I very much was though. You see, entering my Xeno dome, finally, my egg had cracked, and out popped a new Xeno. Naming the little guy Poof, I was very interested in the financial benefits of owning the lad, but having to wait until it grew up, I instead expanded my farm, heading over to the general store where I bought 28 ginger seeds, planting this entire impressive amount and watering. But my eyes still on the alien microbe, I wandered out once again with my detector in hand and gathered some, getting a very impressive nematode at 899 atomic mass units in weight. I digress. Working away, eventually I was lucky enough to detect the correct microbe, bringing it home and crafting my recycler, placing in some rubbish, and while I waited for the result, killed some time by returning to the surface and once again collecting metal, finishing up as the sun set. Day 40 was officially the final day of making vitamins. But wait, quickly feeding my little fluff ball, I realized something. I didn't have enough minerals. None of my chests had any. This was not looking very good. Flying down to the planet below, I hurriedly got to work digging up the ground, hoping I could collect some. It didn't look like I could. Racking my brains, I tried to remember where I had acquired so many to begin with. The situation was dire. Returning to use the last of my minerals and water the ginger, I landed right back down where luckily some minerals began to drop for me. Eventually, I secured the final 5 for the fish people's vitamins, arriving back in my quarters and... oops. It seems I miscalculated. There was no need for the extra minerals all along. Watering my ginger, it was finally time. Descending to the surface, I ran through the abandoned streets, handing over the goods, returning life to King Tide in an instant. Grateful, he happily handed over a piece of the relic, and what's more, Sienna the princess wanted to join my crew, only requiring a fancy quarters. Hoping that wouldn't be too strenuous on my bank account, I chatted with the revived townsfolk and headed back up, talking with Edward and discovering the surprisingly reasonable price point for the housing unit. On top of this, we couldn't yet read the piece, so a new planet had not been discovered. Quarters and then leave for the Grey Planet, I decided, so smelting up some metal, I shot back down to the surface to gather more metal, as quite a hefty amount was needed for the housing unit. This was when I was randomly shooting grass and I finally got a Xeno egg drop, and fairly excited, I returned to smelt some metal and begin the incubation. Day 42 was very special. Friendship Day. Not having the most experience with, friends, I finished watering, then headed to the crew cabins to chat with Fiji, who gave me some congratulatory money for hatching my first Xeno. The event starting soon now, I picked up a bunch of flowers in preparation before microbe hunting a little, and finally entering the fully transformed recreation level. Now, how Friendship Day works is you buy cards from Edward here and you place them in someone's box. The more expensive of a card you put in, the more friendship you gain. Talking with a bunch of people there, I bought a kiss from the mechanical rabbit and opened the card store. 20, 40, and 75 gold for increasingly more friendship, huh? I bought a bunch, placing an expensive monkey one in Doc 12's box. Doc 12 my beloved. I quickly ran out though, so purchasing some more, I made sure everyone got some of my friendship and ran quite dry in terms of funds. I was very happy with the huge amount of cards I'd given away. Everyone seemed so glad, and it was now time for me to open my own box, receiving a massive 2 cards of the cheapest kind. Well, you get what you get. There's always next year. Thank you for those kind words, Piper. When I arrived home, I smelted away my sorrows. At this point, I just need to wait for my furnaces to finish until the quarters could be built. So I decided to kill my time by handing out some local flora to my crewmates. Once I was done with it, I restarted the smelting process, then sadly reminiscing on my emptied wallet thanks to the friendship day, more like inflating Edward's wallet day, I headed out with my microbe detector in hand to hopefully make back some of the lost funds. While working, I unfortunately falsely picked up some pollen, which isn't a microbe, then decided to do some experimenting by handing it to Piper. I got a slightly mixed response. The good news though was now I had all of the required resources for the quarter's repair. As such, on day 44, I picked all of it up, descended to the cargo bay, and bought the repair. Sure enough, next door to the gym was the place under refurbishment. Hoping it would finish quickly, I watered the ginger and once again walked all around the ship looking for microbes, hoping to level up or something. I really do need something. These are worth 9 cents each. I had reason for excitement though. Finishing watering, I ran through the plaza to meet a building still under construction. I'm sure it will be done soon, and betting on such an assumption, I decide to return to the surface of the Blue Reef planet to grind for the resources I would need on the long journey to a new planet ahead of me. I was able to quickly cycle between areas thanks to my ship's checkpoints and managed to gather a bunch of materials, saying my hopefully final goodbye before returning to the ship. Once again, I was stuck with 0 energy and nothing to do, so whipping out the trusty microbe detector, I caught some, and meeting some lads in science and medical, handed them all a flower. Enough waiting though. Running through the plaza again the following morning, still under construction. I can't leave to the Grey Planet either, or else Sienna can't join the crew. Waiting Simulator, my favorite game. Even the cargo shop was closed, so checking my lengthening list of tasks, I remembered Kata's request for surface materials and sheepishly returned to the planet, a little embarrassed to be grinding here, seeing as I had bid farewell just the other day. Copper ore was the main thing she wanted, so cycling through the areas, I gathered a solid enough 15 before returning to my quarters and entering the Xeno pod to find a miracle. My second egg was hatching. What could it be? I watched in anticipation as slowly a strange beetle-looking fella popped out. I fittingly named it Bebble. Then forgetting about my spent energy, I got to work watering, quickly passing out. I'm a little embarrassed. Completing the watering when I awoke, I pessimistically wandered through the plaza to find the quarters were done. This is the greatest day of my life. Flying back down to the planet, I told Sienna of the empty place, and she officially joined the crew, which was great, as finally we could stop with this idling waste of time. Hopping straight into the captain's chair, we set off back to the Grey Planet without allowing any time for goodbyes. But of course, being the hospitable captain I am, I offered a greeting to our new crew member before wandering to the cargo bay store and checking the tool upgrades, which were surprisingly cheap. I want that, so getting some required metal smelting, I spent the night microbe hunting for money and experience. Probably. Day 1 of the trip back to the Grey Planet. Grabbing the restoration gun, I entered Edward's store and paid for an upgrade. Pretty exciting. I then picked some gifts and wandered around, handing them out. Very beneficial for crew morale. And I've become acquaintances with some people. I really thought I was past that stage. Checking my crafting bench back at home, I also realized how close the meteor extractor was, so I recycled some stuff for materials, then walked out to microbe hunt again. Very financially beneficial. Not really. Day 2 of this great journey. Some of my ginger was ready for harvest, but only some, because remember I fell asleep while watering that one time. As such, I decided not to harvest because I wanted the satisfaction of grabbing them all at the same time. The rest of this fantastic day was not so fantastic though. I just microbe hunted a bunch, then deciding to hand out some gifts, was randomly searching around when I got an observation. Very beneficial for breaching the privacy of my crew, so I spent the evening looking for more of them. Very effectively as well, might I add. This says nothing about my character as a captain. What are these goofballs doing? I also got tea from a rabbit before remembering I spent $10 on receiving a smooch from it. But finally, on day 50, all of my ginger was done, and on top of this, Poof had grown up. He certainly is a puff. In other less important news, we had indeed arrived at the Grey Planet, and wandering up to the relic, I placed in the second piece, showing another map. This was very exciting, and setting on leaving tonight, I gave myself the evening to finally get my revenge and complete my exploration of this land. Filled with passion and morale, I need some of what this developer was smoking. It seemed my judgment had been too hasty though, as my luck quickly changed, providing me with free map pieces until the very end, completing the Grey Planet exploration, at long last being awarded with some decoration, blueprints, and metal. Time was running out though, and shooting back up, I selected the new mysterious planet and activated the engines, beginning our long journey ahead. That night, Soot had enough and teleported home. Day 1 of my journey to the new planet. Today, my new ray finally arrived, so with no other use for energy, I got to work cleaning up the larger obstacles I could previously not move. I quickly got winded though, and to catch my breath, I headed to the general store and picked up a bunch of potato seeds, fast growers, so I could plant the new variants as soon as possible. Sowing them all back at base, I got to work watering, but do you remember I'd cleaned this morning so I had no energy? I certainly didn't. I hope there's no one counting these incidents. Day 2 of the journey beyond. Properly watering my crops this time, I was delighted to see my Xeno had produced some wool, hopefully soon to be a solid income source. Since there was only 1 day left until we arrived, being the great captain I am, I decided to spend it handing out gifts, but not any normal gifts. Experimental gifts. I couldn't be distributing pet rocks forever, and although I did find Fiji really liked conch shells, the rest of my items were ultimately failures. I also spoke with Sprat about completing the Grey Planet exploration, receiving nothing in compensation, then returned, wondering why I felt the need for compensation for helping a child with their science project. I spent the evening collecting microbes. I was watering my crops on day 53, and if you'd look at that, the stars had stopped flying past. Entering science and medical, I saw in full view the beautiful yellow planet to which we had arrived. Hypothesizing a desert of some kind, I hopped into my ship and headed down. It seemed my thought was correct. My landing area was a dig site of sorts, slightly abandoned, and sitting at the end was a hermit crab. Apparently, Hermy the crab was an archaeologist of sorts, having his hands on a relic piece, but also having a very broken ship in a very serious state of disrepair. I was admittedly a little lost and struck a deal of museum access for the ship's repair, but hoping it would lead to my grubby fingers owning the piece, I headed out to explore. My main goal was silver, the new ore native to this planet, and breaking a bunch of these stones and taking out a load of freaky new enemies, I made the realization that my blaster was really not fit for this area, taking a longer time to break stones and kill enemies that I was quite comfortable with. As such, when I arrived back on my ship, getting the materials for this upgrade was my first priority. Thanks to my work, after tending to my farm, I was able to head straight down the next morning and order an upgrade for my blaster. This would certainly take a while, so to kill the time, I followed my very strict plan. Beginning by smelting some metal, I headed to the roof to expand my solar array. Using this energy, I also expanded my furnace count before heading through the cargo bay and... Wait, Soot's back. Hello, Soot. Since I had no weapon, just digging was my only option, which I gladly took, even finding a funky plant lad. Returning quickly though to collect up some gifts, receiving some fertilizer from Lynn, and spending the afternoon giving my presents out. Day 2 with no weapon. I feel naked and afraid. Watering my crops, I took a proactive move and checked the ship's repair resources, finding burlap fabric and deciding I must need a fiber spinner to acquire some. Unfortunately, that did require more silver than I had in my possession, leading to another sad sight of me being bullied by the local fauna upon landing and attempting a heist on their belongings. I made the smart decision in leaving quickly, grabbing some flowers and handing them out before hopping on the roof and cleaning up solely as a way to empty my energy bar. My potatoes, by the way, had finally finished growing, so harvesting and selling immediately, I hurried over to the general store to buy the new plants native to this... never mind, it was closed. This turned a very grand day into a very uneventful one, and seeing as it was the last until my blaster completed its upgrade, I once again emptied my energy bar, cleaning up the area, wandering out with my detector in hopes of finding some juicy microbes. I did not. New quarter, new me though, and now with the esteemed rookie captain rank, I finally collected my upgraded weapon, remembering my planters were still empty, and begrudgingly headed to the general store. Buying 15 jute for the mission and 15 tomato seeds, I also made a stop at science and medical to purchase 15 mystery energy source, then planted everything back at my quarters. Nice chores taken care of, I could finally head through the cargo bay and return to the surface of the desert dunes planet. With the goal of level 5 in mind, I took advantage of the hugely grassy areas I was provided with, unfortunately not leading to any Xeno egg drops, but nonetheless, I managed to secure a bunch of silver and get the level 5 checkpoint. Something grand happened on day 58. Bebel, the goofy bug fella, had turned into a giant magnificent butterfly, providing me with produce of its own. I have decided that Xenos are pretty awesome. This grandness ended very abruptly though when I descended once again in search of silver, got to work grinding to the next level, taking out all of the enemies, breaking all the rocks, then getting digging and Still digging with 4 possible places in the entire area left, the map appeared. I can tell you from genuine experience that was not a fun experience. Obviously a little annoyed, I returned to the ship and got my silver smelting. It was done the next morning, so I took them and used them in crafting myself a new fiber spinner and placed in the one jute I'd received as a gift. Truly touched by such kindness, I got to work handing out some gifts of my own, running into Kada and once again accepting her request of surface materials, of which I was yet to complete a single one of. Heading to the cargo bay, I made my way down. Silver was my main goal, but there was no silver here. I just need to check the next level, right? Just break the rocks, nothing. Just get digging and all my energy is gone. I hate this planet already. Finally progressing, I forgot about my energy crisis and knocked myself out. It seems I suffer from short-term memory loss. Or long-term stupid. Fortunately, it seemed I was already nearing the completion of the materials, just needing my jute to grow and silver to be collected. Acting on one, able to be acted on, I set off with the goal of level 10, wasting quite the energy on breaking grass, but my inventory filled with energy drinks, I was able to easily and quickly enough reach my goal. On top of this, I had 20 silver to my name by the time I arrived, which I was happy to return back and smelt, also gathering my completed fabric, 1 out of the 6 required. I spent the night rearranging my chests. There were a couple of things I could currently do. One of these being increase the perception of yours truly through the eyes of the crew. So I set to work handing out a bunch of gifts. The fabric for the repair growing, but more silver needed now though. I arrived at the surface again and gathered away. I'm sure you're beginning to see a certain pattern here. Luckily, this pure monotony was broken when I randomly got a Xeno egg from the grass. An unknown creature sitting in this thing was very exciting, so when night fell, I returned to the Odyssey and threw it in an incubator. Remind me in 5 days to hatch it. In the meantime, watering my jute plants, soon to be fabric, understanding the inevitability of running out of silver once again, I suited up, but this time with the solid goal of completing exploration on this planet, because I wanted to leave as soon as possible. Well, good for me. I was unexpectedly lucky with my map drops and quickly managed to arrive at level 15, an admittedly cozy little area, coming with some blueprints and recycled parts, and a nice view, which I stopped to appreciate. But enough of that funny business. It was back to rising and grinding, beginning with some smelting. And if you look at that, all of my crops were finally harvestable, and excitedly grabbing some jute, I threw it in my spinner. This was the final resource for Hermy's ship, but also, can you guess what else I did? If you said interaction with the people outside, you'd be dead wrong. It was to buy some energy drinks and head down for silver. Being surprised though when I met a familiar face in the cargo bay. It seemed Robai the merchant was back with some predictably useless items for sale. Deciding to save my money for today, I landed on the desert planet and hoping for some more silver throughout the levels, I made my way through the many stages of grief in my quest for this stupid shiny rock. Going home pretty quickly, I realized my goofy spinner was making 1 fabric every 20 hours. So placing another one and powering it from the roof was my reasonable attempt to make this next week slightly less of a waiting simulator. I spent the night quietly looking for microbes since I was sure some would be perfect as gifts. I didn't get to find out though, as I'm wholly terrible at this catching thing. But things were looking up on day 64. Double the spinners meant the repair would be hopefully completed very soon. I also had some spare farm space, so wandering down to the general store, I purchased a heap of garlic seeds and filled my farm with them. Pretty satisfied now, I realized all of the silver was collected. I just needed to wait for these 2 jute spinners. Kill the time, I guess. Heading to science and medical to distribute some gifts, followed by some other locations before remembering about my certain brilliant idea. Catch little microbe pest things and give them out as gifts. No, let me cook here. Searching around, I caught some useless ones before finally detecting and securing one I was thinking of. A soil bacteria. Plants like soil, and who likes plants? A botanist. I'm sure you're catching my drift here. Approaching cautiously, I handed it over and expected the worst, and damn, she loved it. This is a truly inspiring day for Red TM. It seemed when I woke up that in exactly 20 hours, I would be able to repair Hermy's ship, and I had a tight schedule on how I would waste these hours. Beginning on completing my chores in my quarters, I wandered out and got to work cleaning out science and medical of any dangerous viruses, including this nanobot. Huh? Bot? The rabbit might like this. The doctor also seemed like a reasonable guess, so handing it over, I was once again a victim of my own genius. Man, sometimes my own competency strikes fear in my heart. Gifting a little more, interested in any other types of Xenos, I headed back down to search for eggs. My search was unsuccessful. This did not matter though, as day 66 was finally the day Hermy's ship would be repaired. Landing with everything in my inventory, I said hello and gave him the goods. Luckily for me, my bad deal mattered little, and his guilty conscience forced him to hand find me the beautiful third relic piece. And what's more, Hermy wants to join my crew and bring his museum on board the Odyssey, only requiring a place to land his vehicle. I was very happy to hear such news and sure that a piece of floor would be less expensive than an entire fancy living quarters. I checked with Edward and unfortunately it was in fact more expensive than an entire fancy living quarters and required more silver. I want to neck myself. No point in complaining. Getting some more smelting, I finally ran into some good news. After a short expedition through the desert planet looking for more silver, I returned to my Xeno dome to see my egg was ready to hatch, opening to reveal a funky looking bird lad, who I fittingly named Twerp. Composite stone was another large requirement, so getting some smelting, Can you guess what I did? You're right. I was outside interacting with the wonderful people I surround myself with. Just kidding, I was collecting silver. I returned quickly enough though to restart stone smelting, then to remember that 2,000 gold was required to purchase the plot, 600 of which I did not have. So obviously I locked in and ran around gathering microbes and also discovering my inexplicable lack of competence in this catching minigame. Either that or my fingers fell off. Having forgotten exactly how much stone was required, I visited the cargo bay store, stored the numbers, and realized my stone smelting was almost complete. Since I was in the area and the smelting process was not that lengthy, I opted to spend the day cleaning up my area while sometimes putting some new stone in the furnaces. They take 4 hours each. I put in the last required one at 12 and checking the closing time. I would have to wait another day. I am truly playing Waiting Simulator. In the meantime, I begrudgingly returned to the upper decks where I searched for microbes again, handing out the odd gift and accepting a community board request. But it was finally on day 69 that I had all of the materials for Edward to place some floor down. I began by watering, then tending to my Xenos before grabbing some glass from the furnaces for the accepted quest yesterday, heading down to the bay and at long last ordering the repair. I feel nothing. Entering recreation, I handed the glass to Lynn, speeding over to science and medical where I stared at the looming planet out there. I had a thought. I would restock the engine with fuel, hop in my captain's chair, and set course to the grey planet. Something I should have done a long time ago. Not to worry though, I anticipated the repair would take so long. I could safely make a round trip to pick up Hermy without wasting as much time. With my new seats secured, I planted them and spent the evening cleaning up. Day 1 of waiting for 2 days. Heading out on my goofy spaceboard, my mission was to further befriend my friends. A sentiment quickly lost when I walked into a group family yoga session. This is kind of sweet actually. Let me remind you, I am currently watching from the doorway. Handing out some gifts, I quickly returned to my quarters as another mission had been remembered. The Meteorite extractor, made now possible thanks to the desert planet's level 15 prize. Cleaning my roof while the required copper smelted, I was finally able to place it down, realizing I didn't have the power to facilitate such a machine, making an extra solar panel to make up for it and ending the day, placing in my first rare meteorite. I received an email on the second day. The vehicle docking stations were already complete. That is pretty unfortunate. We did arrive in 1 day though, so finishing my watering, I set my sights on an upgraded shovel, but seeing my slight underfunding, I picked some random items and sold them for some quick profit. Knowing I could safely do that tomorrow, I handed Pilot a gift, then remembering Doc 12's love for nanobots, I gave her one, officially making my first friend. This is so exciting. I also had my first access to someone's bedroom. This feels a little weird. Exiting the area and handing Lynn a soil gremlin, I decide to spend the rest of the evening running around looking for microbes. And quickly enough, the morning arrived, along with it an email from Sprout the child informing me of the expansion of the Grey Planet, with double the land to explore. I already, though, had the intention of not exploring it, and walking up to the relic with the piece in my hand, I threw it up, receiving the newest coordinates to a whole star system, it seems. This was very exciting, but also curious about the planet's expansion. I entered level 16 to find strange new rocks, identical enemies, but a whole load of resources. This was relatively good and locking in. I grinded some materials before checking the time, remembering the cargo store closes at 4, rushing home to get the shovel resources, but to no avail. That was admittedly my bad, but having had enough of this place, we shot back to the desert planet, realizing now how terrible of an idea this was. Soot seemed to like our progress though, which was nice, but it seemed day 1 of waiting had once again arrived. To pick up the museum curator, then head to the new new star system. Tending to my Xenos, I decide to kill some time by gifting. Remembering my shovel and heading to the cargo store, I bought the upgrade. Then quickly arriving at the plaza to purchase some seeds from the general store, I procrastinated planting them by running around with gifts again, also finally becoming friends with the botanist. It seemed my soil bacteria was too good to resist. Enough talk though. Wandering back to my quarters, I got to work planting and watering, smelting metal for a microbe composter for some reason, and spending the night collecting some. I didn't quite know how this happened, but on day 74, Lynn managed to send me an apple seed through email. I unfortunately currently had no way of planting said seed, but seeing as today was my last day shooting through space, I whipped out the old restoration beam and got to work cleaning up the last of the junk littering my area. Quickly enough, my energy ran out, but so did the rubbish. Man, it's so clean now. Pity about the massive holes in the floor. In preparation too, I refilled the engine with dark matter, then once again detected and grabbed microbes. Why? For an unknown, soon to be revealed reason. Isn't that exciting? I bet I have you on your toes. On day 75, we arrived at the desert island, meant to be a very short stop on our way to the new system. Heading down to pick up Hermy the Hermit, I realized that all of the cargo bay docks were repaired. The price is slightly justified now. Never mind that, handing everything to Hermy, he happily joined my crew, and flying back up, I was finally introduced to his great museum of... There's nothing here. Apparently, it's indeed my job to collect all of the artifacts. Oh well, sure, some juicy rewards awaited me. I gathered a bunch of donatable looking items and threw all of them in the donation bin, realizing microbes could be given and excitedly getting to work gathering some. That was the unknown reason, by the way. You are watching a Red TM production. Edward was apparently quick these days. With my shovel already done, I headed outside to realize I had forgotten to set off for the new system. That is fully my bad, and starting the engines, we were soon en route. For now though, I was engulfed by a certain motivation to complete the microbe section of the museum, and was frantically scanning for them, quickly realizing an upgrade would make this easier, and ordering one... Wait a second. I am left with nothing to do. What are my tools? I got a cleaner here. I spent the night cleaning the roof, then setting some jute in my spinner. My potatoes were done the next morning, so harvesting them, I was happy to say Twerp the bird had finally produced a feather. Very financially beneficial. Seeing my heightened assets, I wandered over looking for Robai, who was miraculously here today, and bought a Xeno egg from him. Realizing that this dome was now full, I began preparations for a new one when I remembered about the microbe composter that I wanted, and crafted it. Excited to try it, I don't have a way to try it. Moving quickly on, I picked up a bunch of semi-random items that I presumed would be enjoyed and headed out, being distracted on the way by a microbe research board, and collected my various rewards for catching them. In a good mood from that nice surprise, I spent some significant time handing out gifts. Until of course I discovered something strange. My puff lad had grown huge, possibly an adult of some sorts, and now produced pink wool, which was much more expensive. Very nice. On other news, apparently it was the child's birthday today, and being the great captain I am, I quickly located them and handed over a rock. As per usual, a surprising reaction. While I was here, I gifted a bunch of other people as well, accepting a request from Pilot, which I completed quickly after. Finally though, on day 79, we arrived at our destination. Through the large window, it seemed like a cluster of white planets. So excitedly heading down, I... crash. It seemed CPU had trolled a bit, and we had ended up going through the roof of some poor Yeti. What's more, we had completely squashed the guy's supplies that he had been gathering to feed his starving family. And also the relic piece was there, so I headed straight out. If I reimbursed the Yeti's supplies, I would receive the relic piece. Exploring the area a little, I entered a new area, getting to work gathering random new materials and trying out my new shovel, which was quite strong indeed. I quickly headed home though, and entering the plaza, actually checked the stuff I needed, buying seeds for the food in bulk, and planting then watering them back in my quarters. Checking once more, I found the peculiar note saying that this was made in a kitchen. I do not have a kitchen, so presuming I could buy one, I headed down to Edward's shop. Sure enough, there it was, pretty cheap except for the gold price, which I was nowhere near achieving. Luckily, I had some tricks up my sleeve, including my new microbe detector, which I set to work and it caught microbes. I don't know, it seemed pretty much the same. I couldn't even donate them since Hermy was standing still for hours next to this box. So remembering gold spawned down there and thinking a block would fetch a solid price, I got to work gathering some. Luck was also on my side and I managed to reach level 5, unlocking a checkpoint and securing 16 gold along the way. Grabbing a watermelon, I smelted all the gold the following morning, and after tending to my Xenos, I headed to recreation as I had some crops for Lynn's research, or something, surprisingly receiving a garden bot blueprint blueprint in return. And interested in what its uses could be, I checked the crafting bench, but unfortunately, I had no batteries. Neither did I have any ideas on where to find some, so just descending to the surface as a desperate hope, I looked around getting absolutely nowhere until striking gold with another Xeno egg. No batteries though, but there was some good news. In particular, my 4th Xeno egg was finally hatching, turning out to be a strange blob octopus. I fittingly named it Blobtopus. My squash was almost harvestable, so to wait till then, I headed out with some gifts and handed them out, making a quick stop by the museum to donate something I found on the surface, flying down to find some more with my secondary goal of reaching level 10. Fighting off massive snowmen and sucking down all of my energy drinks, I encountered some pretty inconceivable luck, but still, through pure skill, I managed to arrive safely on level 10. I then passed out on my way home. But there was some good luck in the form of a harvestable squash, which after grabbing I realized I had enough funds for the kitchen, heading down to buy it, but quickly noticing my distinct lack of metal. I had forgotten to smelt some. There were 15 free spots though, so wandering through the plaza, I bought 15 cotton seed, which I would have to harvest and knit to restore the supplies. In other news, Bebble the beetle had grown a fur coat. Very stylish. Anyways, it's microbe time, so grabbing some new to the museum's collection, I ran down to drop them off. Oh, wrong floor. Oh man. I was literally seconds too late. Back to microbes, I guess. This is my life now. Fiji had sent me a poster. It seems to be a soybean playing the ukulele. Kitchen supplies were finally complete though, so passionate in making some blueberry muffins, I purchased it. Right next door, Hermy was also manning the museum, so donating a bunch, I received a prize and checked out the rapidly growing collection. No time for idling though, there was work to do. Purchasing some energy source, I headed through the bay, saying hello to Robai and buying nothing, before flying down with the explicit goal of reaching level 15 and claiming the grand prize. I was hyped, I was motivated, I was ready to conquer this planet. This first level took 2/3 of my energy. But moving on, you see this bush? The lad behind it can shoot through it, and I cannot, and passed out. That night, I was promoted to a skilled captain, receiving many congratulations in the mail. I presumed this would be revoked upon receiving news of yesterday's performance. Nonetheless, I watered my crops, then wandered to science and medical to check my microbe board process, handing out some gifts while I was here, then returning to the plaza to purchase some batteries for the garden bots and seeds as well, as I had something planned. You see, I recently learned the medium solar panel, so crafting it along with a bunch of planters, 10 of them to be precise, I extended my array on the roof, placing all of the planters and placed some broccoli inside them before finally crafting up the garden bot. Apparently, it was like a sprinkler, but I could usefully change the configuration. Very nice. Continuing this trend, day 86, house was still being upgraded, so I just watered, then headed down to reach level 15, careful of bushes this time, and I managed to reach it. No stress on my end, obviously. I'm the greatest player of all time. I received some blueprints and another energy spark. Unbelievably great to see. Continuing this trend, day 87. My kitchen was finally complete. At this point, to help the Yeti, I needed to wait for my blueberries to grow, then to wait until my cotton grew. Basically, just wait. As such, I set myself the temporary goal of completing Cater's research, because you know, there's a first for everything. Landing on the surface, I got to work gathering mostly just gold as I had everything else at home, strategically moving from checkpoint to checkpoint as they refreshed as soon as you left. Quickly managing the 25 ores I needed, I was happy to return and hand them all over, unlocking myself the freezer recipe. I couldn't make it. The agenda still consisting of waiting, I noticed Piper had asked me to craft some decorations. I think I can cheat this, I thought, heading to the general store, but seeing the prices, I immediately left and got to work crafting them instead. Never mind, I scrapped the idea entirely before making the rash decision that I, in fact, had no reason to be here. Just waiting left to do, so wanting to complete Cater's research, I set the coral planet's coordinates in and shot off. En route now for the next couple of days, I began by collecting some microbes before remembering the long wait to house Hermy and took the executive action in pre-checking the price for an appropriate living unit for some Yetis. Never mind, it was closed. Back to collecting microbes. But when I woke up, my blueberries were ready for harvest. You know what that means. Wandering to the plaza, I purchased a bunch of muffin ingredients and excited to get cooking, I returned to my kitchen and chefed up all of the required dishes. I'm very satisfied. Satisfied enough to gift a little and spend the rest of the day collecting microbes for Hermy the hermit crab. We arrived in exactly 1 day, and having just remembered about the Yeti's house debacle, I entered the cargo bay store and surprisingly found the perfect place can house a large family and a store, huh? It is pretty cheap, so there's no need for panic, but I did wonder what they would be selling to me. Looking forward to such a discovery, I donated the microbes I had found yesterday, continuing my search in the cargo bay when I encountered the strongest bacteria yet, even managing to catch it, which I was very proud about. And knowing that time would be limited tomorrow, I held some gifts and handed them out throughout the Odyssey. Both my cotton and blueberries were ready for harvest, so beginning the cotton weaving process, I agreed upon leaving this planet today to return to the snowy place and just needing some seaweed and conch shells. I was confident in my plan. Arriving on the surface in the newly explorable areas, it was just as tranquil as it ever had been. Seaweed was plentiful, but I did have a slight concern in the shape of a conch shell. Where were they? I tried taking a bunch of seashell enemies out, but to no avail. No other enemy worked either, and no rock that I broke left one behind. Maybe I have some stored at home. Returning to the mothership and having a look, it did not seem like it. And if I wanted to leave today, something had to be done. Arriving back on the surface now, I got to work digging up every single piece of dirt around, with time very rapidly running out. I just needed one. As you can see here, I checked my energy 4 left and dug, passing out. The energy bar updates slowly. No time for past regrets though. I immediately returned to the surface and determined to get my shell going through the areas, digging up every single piece of dirt on every single island I visited. Was I actually really gonna be here another day? Hoping this wasn't the case, at long last, I got it. Grabbing the last of the required copper, I ran straight and handed them over to Kada, receiving an advanced furnace blueprint in return, crafting one up back at home, then setting off back to the Icelandis cluster. 2 days until arrival, and today was a special one. You see, Blobtopus had grown up. It seemed he had grown into his name. I also had another nanobot to my name, so handing it to Doc 12, we became good friends apparently, and hunting for observations, I found a log in her display. It explained Doc 12 was a clone, the 12th out of 26. I don't know what to think about that. I spent the day gifting in the plaza, collecting microbes, then donating to the museum. Cotton number 5 and 6 began spinning on day 94, and after smelting some gold for Bunky the Yeti's new home, I headed down to Science and Medical to see a strange sight. Jimmy and Doc 12 were working, accidentally witnessing their respective parents meeting up and... What? It might be getting warm in here. Jimmy did not seem too happy with the idea, and Doc 12 made a robotically snarky reply, making them both pissed off. What a strange encounter, I thought as I got back to collecting microbes, spending the night cleaning my quarters. But finally we had arrived. Plenty of cotton still to spin though, so heading back down, I rechecked the requirements, noticing the bouquet, and wandering to the general store, I was happy to see and buy one there. Leaving with some seeds as well, I rearranged my planters to house the garden bots, and after planting, decided I needed some more. Unfortunately, I lacked the copper ore, but upon landing to search for some more, it was obvious I'd come to the wrong place. Gathering some materials anyway, I returned to some more cotton spinning. Supplies almost complete now, I descended to the cargo bay and purchased the storefront, really hoping they wouldn't ask for a different house. I remembered Robai sold copper as well, and needing some for my garden bots, I headed over, but he wasn't around. Wait, but there was good news though. I got to witness Family Exercise Part 2, where Buff Dude tried to show off, but ended up falling asleep. Truly inspiring stuff. I handed out gifts for the evening. This surprisingly led to an email from Lauren the next morning sharing a recipe. Very nice. I also placed in the final required cotton. Only 32 hours to wait. Very nice. For now, I decide to decorate my house a little, adding a bookcase and a bench, wandering into a strange confrontation between Stuart and CPU, involving Stuart's very important time being wasted, and then him reasonably quitting his job. Sure, he would be back tomorrow. I went down to gather metal, returning to my quarters to craft a juicer. For some reason, forgetting about it the following morning, there were only a few hours until the cotton was complete. So to kill the time, I made a quick schedule. Beginning with building another solar panel, I was able to power my juicer, into which I threw a squash. Spending the last hour gathering microbes, I picked up everything Bunky wanted and flew right down, handing them over. He was overjoyed and happily gave me the relic piece that he had to repair thanks to the ship landing on it. As a big relief as well, he did in fact want to move into the storefront, which would be completed tomorrow. And through the power of my fingers, tomorrow had arrived. Heading down to the planet, I gladly welcomed 4 new crew members, Bunky, his wife, and their 2 children. Heading back and letting them move in, I checked out the exterior, very nice looking, and got back to work collecting microbes. It's like completing a Pokédex. I am very much enjoying myself. Bunky would be here by now though, so I set off to the grey planet and spent the night cleaning up the roof, and finally it was day 100. I tended to my plants, and watching a book club meetup, I decided that I was having fun. I had enjoyed myself here on the Odyssey. Seeing as it was Doc 12's birthday, I handed her a nanobot. Looking through my microbe decks, then had a quick visit to Bunky's store, which seemed to revolve around cosmetics. I purchased hot pink hair, donated to Hermy's museum, and grabbing my drink, headed to the roof to enjoy it. I was yet to complete the relic or visit all the other worlds out there, so if this video gets a huge amount of likes, I'll make 200 days. Also, I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers at some point, so please subscribe. I'll give Little Known Galaxy a decent 7 out of 10, but with some balancing, that could definitely be much higher. Thanks for watching.